Hi everyone, Gundam Facts here for our 18th and brand new episode of our special edition Lore of the Universal Century. Today we're going across the entire Universal Century in an attempt to answer a particular question, which is... Yep, in this video, we're going to explore the 5 best outdated GIMS models, when did they appear, how long and how well they last, and extract every bit of mechanical knowledge we have on them so far. But let's start by the beginning. What is exactly the GIM? Standing for Gundam Mass Produced or General Model, the GIM is the entire family of Earth Federation mobile suits deriving from the RGM-79, the modest and infamous mass production mobile suit of the original Gundam, the RX-7902. A line of mobile suit as iconic as its nemesis line, the Zaku series, the GIM is a common pattern in the UC franchise, appearing at any source in every era, be it the 1 Year War, the Zeta era, the UC 90s, and of course the late UC. The pinnacle of grunt suits, GIMS have proved through their many appearances to be black ships in UC, prone to be destroyed in masses by uber-powered Zeon aces, and used as kill count fodder by dubious side stories writers who barely hide their preference for Zeon. Nonetheless, scenario odds aside, the GIMS are in the end portrayed as capable mobile suits, reliable and with a high adaptability, the true grunt suits in UC. Yet, the decent performance of the GIMS is almost always hampered by a problem. GIMS tend to get outdated very quickly, and while you will see old Zeon's mobile suits kicking asses against modern foes decades after their creation, the same cannot be said of GIMS who tend to become walking coffins after just a couple of years. The most common example would be the GIM 2, a UC-84 roulotte GIM which lasts in combat exactly 32 seconds in UC-87 and exactly 10 seconds, and I'm not even kidding, in UC-96. That's a big difference with the 17 years old Zogok who lasts slightly more than 8 minutes during the Battle of Torrington. Now, while most GIMS age badly, it's not an universal curse. In fact, some GIMS have proved to age relatively well, if not like fine wine. Let's see now the 5 GIMS entering the pantheon of effective Old War dogs. First of our list, a mobile suit you would expect the least. I'm talking about the RGM-79Q, aka the GIM Quell. The mass production version of the GIM Custom, commissioned by the Titans to serve as their new mainstay mobile suit, the Quell appeared in UC-83 as this advanced elite GIM, which was supposed to literally quell the Zeon remnants by being Quell, the acronym qualified to use earthly law, with magnetic coating ensuring high maneuverability and multiple inbuilt sensor ports enabling qualitative human surveillance inside colonies. The Quell was in UC-83 far superior than everything the Zeon remnants could throw at it. This is well displayed in Gundam Legacy, where the GIM Quell showcased its dominance over Zeon 1 Year War suits. Yet, the Quell history didn't seem to start as the story of a GIM which would last very long. In UC-84, barely 1 year after entering service, the Titans started searching replacements for it, and eventually phased it out with the slightly more performing and way cheaper Isaac. During the Grips War, the Quell was still well integrated in the Titans' arsenal, but wasn't anymore nor a regular nor a mainstay machine, having become barely 5 years after its official introduction an uncommon sight. In comparison with newer Titan suits, notably the Barzam and Marasai, the GIM Quell was unable to compete, and so it would seem the Quell do not deserve to be part of this list. However, the thing is that there are multiple ways to age well for a mobile suit. As a frontline military mass production mobile suit, the Quell didn't last very long, but that wouldn't be the case everywhere. In the early UC90s, the PMC Themis, who recruited even ex-Titans, restarted using the Quell, and as a private military corporation unit, the Quell proved that it was indeed one of the best outdated GIMs, with its design making it a real force to be retconned. Of course, in comparison with modern military suits or ace units, the Quell was outmatched, but in lower scale conflicts, notably against small Zeon remnants, pirates, and armored gangs, the Quell would literally wreck everything. Later on in UC91, other GIM Quells were brought on Mars by Titan's remnants and recovered by Ryzeon. The organization started fielding such units and would use some of them during the Martian Civil War, proof that the Quell was still a decent pick 8 years after its introduction. In the end, the Quell earned its spot by remaining relevant up to 8 years after its rollout, albeit only at the 5th place, because it had to retire from the main front lines. Second best outdated GIM so far. This time, a 1-year war machine. I'm calling out the EarthGem 79S Master Chief GIM Spartan. A high-performance mobile suit part of the second generation of GIMs, the Spartan was developed from the GIM Command and was literally built to be the king of the jungle. Specialized to fight in subtropical regions, the GIM Spartan could rely on its camouflage jacket, armored shoulders, and advanced backpack to surprise wandering Zeon suits in the jungle, before finishing them off with its custom arsenal made of multiple Sacros missiles on its shoulders, handled composite weapon combining a minigun and a grenade launcher, and a pulse knife for close-range combat. This deadly combination made the Spartan one of the best ground GIMs of the war, and it soon started being used even outside of subtropical terrains, as displayed by the Black Dogs in Code Fairy, who possess several units and even customized one for their leader. Fun fact, the GIM Sniper 2 actually owed its propulsion system to the Spartan, which tested it and led to further research on it. After the 1-year war, the Spartan remained in use, but unlike the Sniper 2, who became more or less obsolete as time went by, the Spartan was able to make a godly comeback by reverting to its original specification of jungle machine. In UC87, the anti-Titans organization Karaba, based on Earth, took at least one GIM Spartan out of the Naphtali and fielded it alongside its Nemo and GIM 2 forces on Earth. Now, we know very little of this Zeta-era throne GIM Spartan, but it is said it performed well. This old GIM likely fought against Marasites, Gaplans, Ashimars, and performed well. This seriously deserves more recognition and respect. Like the GIM Quell, the Spartan proved operational and effective between 7 and 8 years after its creation, but since it was on military front lines and continued to shine, it deserved the 4th spot rather than the 5th. Number 3 position incoming, this time a mobile suit expected by anyone who read Fastos' formula. I'm calling out the RGM86 Air GIM 3. Ironically, a vast upgrade of the GIM 2, one of the worst outdated GIM ever made, the GIM 3 appeared on the front line in UC88 as the first Neo-Zeon war raged and quickly earned itself a reputation as a very effective machine. Featuring a backpack developed from the infamous Gundam Mach 2, the GIM 3 was a 2nd generation mobile suit in the era of 4th generation's machine, but still carved itself a place due to its maneuverability, versatility, ability to mount different equipments, and of course, relatively low costs. These combined factors made the GIM 3 an asset to be retconned, and one of the primary factors the Federation eventually defeated Neo-Zeon in the grand scheme of things. By UC89, the GIM 3 was progressively supplanted by its own successor, the J-Gun, but remain in service in less shiny garrisons of the Earthsphere. In UC-96, 8 years after its creation, a Gem 3 of the Darkar garrison can be seen in Unicorn taking care of a Zhuagu with relatively ease. But since the Zhuagu is older, let's leave this aside. No, the real show of strength of the Gem 3 would come in UC-112, at the end of the first arc of Faster's formula. In his quest to destroy the Gundam F90, as we saw in the F90 antagonist video I highly recommend to watch, Oi Randager engaged the service of a 3-man mercenary unit, GBG, standing for Gleam Black Guns, to take care of the F90 allies. GBG owned 3 heavily customized but nonetheless old Gem 3s, one being upgraded with stock Gigant parts, another unit with replica parts of the full armor Gundam, and another one with a novel Gem 3 head and also stock Gigant parts. These 3 24-year-old Gem 3s basically managed to do the unthinkable. Not only they managed to contend with the far superior F-89 or F-90 Gundams, but they also destroyed some of their allies, notably much modern Gustav cars, and even worse, EV guns, which is even more impressive as the EV gun is a miniaturized machine and should have a vast advantage over them. So we have the Gem 3 remaining a deadly machine 24 years after its creation. Yes, the GBGs were good pilots, but their opponents of Team B were decent pilots as well, so the 3rd place is well earned by the Gem 3. Next to the winner position, we welcome a late UC gem, my favorite late UC gem, the RGM 122 Javelin. Deployed for the first time in the middle of the Cosmo-Babylonia War, the Javelin appeared as the situational mass production mobile suit for the Federation forces. The machine would finally ensure the Federation forces would have something better than the J-Gun and the Heavy Gun to deal with the Crossbone Vanguard. A cheap miniaturized mobile suit from Anaheim Electronics, the Javelin soon proved to be a best-seller, implementing at last modern technologies such as the beam shield, while displaying a very high space mobility provided by its numerous external verniers. Ice on the cake, the Javelin plagiated the Crossbone Vanguard Shot Lancer through its backpack weapon, the Javelin Lancer, which made the Javelin excellent to fight inside colonies. After its limited production during the Cosmo-Babylonia War, the Javelin was put to mass production, and because of its performance, it remained in service as the mainstay suit. In UC-133, the Javelin, now 10 years old, proved itself surprisingly relevant, with its experienced pilots scoring many successes against way more modern machines from the Jupiter Empire, such as the Batala or the mass production Corvettes. Having aged like fine wine, the Federation stupidly replicated the same mistake as they had once done with the J-Gun, by keeping the Javelin. And when the Zalskar War erupted in UC-153, the 30-year-old Javelin was out of its time, and preyed upon by the way more modern Zalskar suits. Or at least that's the misconception the wiki gave you. In fact, that was not exactly true. Yes, the Javelin was painfully outdated when it came to raw performance, in comparison with the first Zalskar suit, the Zoloat, but the Victory series show us otherwise. In its appearances, the Javelin suffered some casualties, but never overwhelming ones. Even better, the Javelin is shown to be actually still very capable, with the clip of a Javelin one shooting down a Zoloat being played not once, but at least 2 or 3 times in the TV series. If this seems mid to you, that would be like an original Gem shooting down a Messer. You would say the Gem have aged well and have a mad respect for it, right? Well, this is the same, so it shows the Javelin was perhaps out of its time, but nonetheless still relevant. And before someone says otherwise, the Zoloat is still an excellent suit. Even the Ligue Militaire doesn't spit about stealing some. Yes, I'm looking at you, what. This Carva plays for the Javelin in the top 2, as it was able to score kills 30 years after its creation. Now, let's move to our winner. And for our number 1 best outdated gem, a winner you definitely never expected, Rise James Gun. Developed in UC 119, the James Gun was the brother unit of the Javelin, also featuring a beam shield and using very similar if not the same spare parts. While it could perform in space, the James Gun was usually reserved to ground combat and served as the main suit of the Earth Federation ground forces for almost 4 decades. Now I know a lot of you are confused right now. You are probably thinking, no, okay, maybe the Javelin was good, but no way the James Gun is a best outdated gem, let alone in the first place. Like, it's common knowledge it's cannon fodder in Victory and a poor match to any modern technologies. Really? Then show me. Here it's Gundam facts and not Gundam feelings. And if someone say the James Gun is atrociously outdated in UC 153, then let's examine the claim. The truth about the James Gun is that unlike the Javelin, which spawned here and there in the series, the James Gun appearances are only a handful, and we will now examine them all. The first appearance of the James Gun is in episode 11, where a lone James Gun from the backwater base Bechin is seen digging a trench with a shovel. This James Gun is then forced into combat when Zarskar arrives. The 34 years old James Gun is assaulted by 3 brand new battle bikes and a brand new land mobile armor, the Galaxon. The James Gun is then destroyed as 3 brand new transformable Tomliats arrive, which is indeed not very glorious. The thing is that the James Gun starts fighting at 10.30 minutes and only gets shot down at 13.2 minutes after an off-screen fight. This basically means that this lone James Gun lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds against a group of enemies holding numerical and technological advantage. That's like 5 times longer than the Gym 2 in Zeta. In comparison, the beloved Stark J-Gun lasts 1 minute and 30 seconds against the Kshatriya, and only if you include the other J-Guns getting mauled. So sure that the James Guns suck now? Now, the second time we see James Guns, they're in group during the Earth Cleansing Operation ARC, where they lead a bombing run on the Adrastea. Nothing to say, it's not very effective, but they don't get shot down at least, unlike the public class. Later, one James Gun is surprised by Katejina, but we have brand new Gun-Easy getting killed for less than that, so it's a pass in favor of the James Gun. The last appearance is when the Angel Halo descends on Earth, when several James Guns are seen on the hull of the Jeanne d'Arc. Again, an unremarkable appearance. Now, there is something aside the TV series which proves the James Gun deserves the first place. In the Mobile Suit variation of Victory, we learn that prior to the start of the series, Zarskar attempted to invade Africa, only to be stopped by a 4th-man squad from the Federation. This team, named AAAA Squad, was a group of veterans of the Earth Federation ground forces, not aces, and Captain Gomez, future supporting character in Victory, was among these 4 pilots who stopped an entire invasion force using James Guns. Later, we learned that the 4As locally upgraded their James Guns into desert types, but that was just a local enhancement for desertic combat. Imagine 4 34-year-old machines stop an entire division of Vespa, which counted brand new Tomliats in its ranks. This is the kind of success never seen in the Gym line till the James Gun. For holding on at the Bechin base and for the African victories, the James Gun finally deserved to be crowned Best Outdated Gym, being a machine still relevant after 34 years. This is the end of our list. Tell us in the comments which surprised you the most and why. Now, Gundam Facts out. And we have now completed today's topic, and I hope you'll like it. This will be all for today's video, but stay tuned for future lore content delivered on the same channel. Hit the like button, and most importantly, comment and subscribe as it will really help the channel to flourish. So long fellow new types, until the time of our next special edition.